A cold wind cuts through the mountains. Snow falls gently over a small, quiet island. In the middle of that frozen world, a little figure walks alone, tiny hooves pressing into the snow, a worn pink hat tilted over his eyes. He's not just any traveler. He's the doctor who will one day save his crew's lives, the friend who will stand in front of danger without fear, and the heart of the Straw Hat Pirates. His name is Tony Chopper, and for the first time ever, we will see him in live action, before the world meets Chopper in flesh and fur. Before his name becomes legend across the Grand Line, there is an island few have ever heard of. Drum Island, a land wrapped in ice and guarded by towering mountains. Its people live under a heavy shadow, ruled by a king whose greed runs deeper than the snowdrifts that bury their homes. Life here is not easy. Winter never ends, and sickness can strike without warning. But somewhere, hidden among the forests and frozen cliffs, hope is quietly walking on four small hooves. Chopper was born different. Not just because he could speak, not just because he could walk like a human, but because his heart was not like the others of his kind. The reindeer herds feared him, the humans feared him even more. To them, he was a monster, a strange creature touched by something unnatural. Driven away from both worlds, he wandered alone through the snow, his only comfort the sound of the wind, and the quiet crunch of his steps, but even in loneliness, fate was watching. One day, deep in the wilderness, Chopper would meet a man who changed everything, Dr. Hiluluk. A doctor unlike any other, Hiluluk was reckless, loud, and stubborn, but his heart burned with a kindness that could melt even the coldest winter. He saw Chopper not as a monster, but as a patient, a friend, and a son. For the first time in his life, Chopper was welcomed into a home. Hiluluk's days were not endless, his time was short. But in the little time they had, he taught Chopper more than medicine. He taught him that a doctor's duty was not just to heal bodies, but to heal hearts. He taught him that sometimes, even a hopeless situation can be turned into something beautiful. And so, in the shadows of Drum Island's oppression, a dream began to grow inside Chopper, to become a doctor who could cure any disease, anywhere. In the world, what Chopper didn't know was that his path to that dream would lead him into the storm, a storm made of steel, greed, and cruelty. The return of the tyrant king, Wapol, would shatter the small peace he had found, and soon the lonely reindeer would have to make a choice, run away, or stand and fight. And on the other side of that choice waited a crew unlike any other. The Straw Hats, snowflakes danced in the air like fragile pieces of glass, but Drum Island was not at peace. The sound of hoofbeats and heavy boots echoed through the valleys. Flags bearing the crest of a smug, laughing face fluttered in the wind. Wapol, the man who had abandoned his kingdom when pirates came, the king who cared more for his own stomach than his people, had returned. But he didn't come back to heal his land. He came back to claim it, to take what little the people had left. The news spread like wildfire through the villages. Merchants closed their stalls, mothers pulled their children indoors, and the once busy paths turned into empty trails of snow. Wapol's guards, the blinking pirates, marched through the streets, their armor clanging with every step. They demanded food, shelter, gold, anything that could be carried away. Those who resisted were crushed without mercy. In the mountains, Chopper watched from a distance. His breath steamed in the cold air as his sharp eyes followed the chaos. Below, he had heard of Wapol before, from Hiluluk and from whispers in the village. A man who ruled with greed. A man who left his people to suffer when danger came. But now, seeing the fear in their eyes, Chopper understood the truth. Wapol was more than a bad king. He was a disease, and Drum Island was dying from it. Hiluluk, frail but still stubborn, refused to hide. A doctor never runs from the sick, he told Chopper, coughing into a scarf. A Chopper could see the strain in his mentor's body. The king's return meant danger, and danger meant they had to be ready. Hiluluk worked late into the night, brewing medicines, preparing bandages. Chopper stayed by his side, his small hands learning every step. Yet beneath his determination, fear gnawed at him, not fear for himself, but fear of losing the only person who had ever believed in him. The storm came sooner than they expected. One morning, the peaceful white of the mountains was broken by a black line of men climbing toward Hiloluk's home. Wapol's soldiers had heard of the monster doctor living in the hills, and they came with orders: capture him, kill him, or drive him out. Chopper acted before thinking. His hooves pounded the snow, his breath burning in his chest as he raced down the slope. His body shifted, a flash of fur, muscle, and strength. The powers of the Hido Hido no Mi surged through him, transforming him from small and timid to something fierce. He slammed into the soldiers with a strength they didn't expect, sending them scattering like snow in a blizzard. But no matter how hard he fought, there were too many. Steel met fur, and the world spun around him. Pain exploded in his side. He hit the ground, the cold snow burning against his skin. He tried to stand, but his legs trembled. The soldiers closed in, their boots crushing the snow around him. And then a shadow fell over them, Hiloluk, standing tall despite his age and illness, his coat flapping in the wind. "Get away from my son," Hiloluk's voice roared, carrying through the mountain air. For a moment, even the soldiers hesitated. But the king's orders were absolute, and they advanced again. Hiloluk pulled Chopper up, his eyes fierce. "There's no cure for greed, my boy. But there's always hope, and you're going to carry it." With those words, he pushed Chopper toward the forest, away from the fight. Chopper wanted to stay, wanted to fight by his side, but the look in Hiloluk's eyes told him there was no choice. The snow swallowed him as he ran, and behind him the sound of steel, shouts, and a single gunshot cut through the cold air. The mountains went silent again. Only the wind remained. Somewhere far below, a ship with a straw hat flag was making its way to Drum Island. And fate was about to bring Chopper face to face with the crew who would change his life forever. The storm had passed, but the cold felt sharper than ever. The mountains of Drum Island stood silent, their peaks lost in heavy clouds. Somewhere deep in the forest, Chopper sat alone beneath a snow-laden tree. His breath came in uneven clouds, and his fur was damp from melting snow. He could still hear the echo of that gunshot in his mind, sharp and final. The scarf Hiloluk had given him hung loosely around his neck. The fabric still warm from his mentor's hands. Chopper didn't cry. Not yet. The pain sat too deep for tears, locked tight inside his chest. He wanted to go back, to find Hiloluk, to change what had happened, but his hooves wouldn't move. The world felt too big, too cruel, and in the quiet, one thought kept. Returning, I'm alone again, but fate, like the Grand Line, is never still. That same day, far from the mountains, a ship pushed through the icy waters toward Drum Island's shore. Its crew laughed in the freezing wind, a swordsman sharpening his blade, a thief with eyes like a hawk, a cook grumbling about the cold, and at their center, a boy in a straw hat, grinning as though winter itself was just another adventure. They had not come for Chopper. They had come for a doctor. But the Grand Line has a way of giving you what you need. Even if you don't yet know it, the Straw Hats stepped onto the island with the kind of confidence only pirates could carry. News of their arrival reached Wapol quickly, and he saw an opportunity. Strangers could be hunted, used, or made an example of. His soldiers began their search, marching through the snow, but it wasn't them who found Chopper first. It was Luffy. It happened in a clearing where the snow was untouched, except for a trail of small hoofprints. Chopper had been searching for rare herbs, pushing aside his grief with the habit Hiloluk had taught him. When you're lost, help someone else. The crunch of boots in the snow made him freeze. He turned, expecting soldiers, but instead saw a tall, gangly human wearing the strangest hat he'd ever seen. And smiling, always smiling. "You're a reindeer," Luffy blurted, as if he'd just discovered treasure. "A talking reindeer. That's so cool." Chopper didn't know what to say. People usually screamed or threw stones or ran. But this boy, he looked at Chopper like he was something amazing, not something to fear. It was disarming, and Chopper's first instinct was to run anyway. Luffy didn't chase him. He just shouted into the snow, "Hey, we're looking for a doctor. Are you one?" The word hit Chopper like a spark. He wanted to say yes, but he thought of Hiloluk's lessons, of the patients he couldn't save yet, of the cruel laughter of men like Wapol. He wasn't ready. Not yet. The moment didn't last long. From the trees, the sound of clanking armor broke the stillness. Wapol's men had found them. Chopper's ears twitched. He could smell the oil and iron before he saw them. Luffy didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, cracking his knuckles, that same grin still plastered across his face. Guess it's time for a fight. The soldiers didn't know what they were up against. In the flurry of snow that followed, fists flew, blades clashed, and Luffy moved like a storm let loose. Chopper stood frozen at first, torn between fear and something else, admiration. Here was someone who didn't just protect himself. He'd protected everyone around him without a second thought. When the battle ended, the snow was stained and scattered, and the Straw Hat stood untouched, breathing hard but still smiling. He looked back at Chopper as if the fight had only been a warm-up. So, you coming with us? Chopper didn't answer. He didn't know yet if he could trust them, or if they'd even want him once they learned what he was. But somewhere deep inside, a seed had been planted, the kind that grows roots even in frozen ground. The wind howled through the drum castle's shattered halls, carrying the scent of gunpowder and the sting of cold steel. Snow swirled across the stone floors like restless spirits, and in the center of it all stood the man who had poisoned this land for years. Wapol. His jeweled coat hung heavy over his round frame, his smirk wider than the doorway he blocked. The golden crown on his head gleamed in the dim light, but it wasn't gold that made him dangerous. It was the power he had stolen, the fear he fed on. You think a little reindeer and a pirate boy can stand against me? Wapol's voice was thick with mockery. He stepped forward, boots thudding against the frozen ground. I am the king of Drum Island. I take what I want, and I will take this island back along with every last one of you. Chopper's breath misted in the air, his small frame trembling, not from the cold, but from the weight of the moment. Every memory came rushing back. The rejection from his herd, the cruel stares from humans, the warmth of Halok's laugh. The lesson that even in the harshest winter, a doctor's heart must never freeze. This was the disease Hilulok had spoken of, greed without cure. And if no one stood against it, it would spread again. Luffy's voice cut through his thoughts. Chopper, you're our friend now, right? Then let's beat this guy together. Something inside Chopper shifted. He had run from so many battles before. Not because he was weak, but because no one had ever stood beside him. Now, someone did. The Straw Hats were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for this land, for him. Wapol lunged first, his massive frame moving faster than it should, his jaws widening unnaturally, the power of the Baku Baku no Mi twisting his body into a monstrous weapon. Chopper didn't hesitate. He popped a rumble ball into his mouth, the strange medicine igniting his body with power. Muscles rippled beneath his fur, his form shifting in an instant. First into arm point, his hooves pounding the stone like hammers. Then into jumping point, leaping high above Wapol's strike, snow scattering around him like shattered glass. The fight became a storm. Luffy's rubber fists lashed out in wide arcs, smashing through walls and armor. Chopper's blows landed with precision, every strike a surgeon's cut, aimed to weaken and unbalance. Wapol roared, twisting his body into monstrous shapes, swallowing weapons and spitting them back out as jagged metal. But the Straw Hats didn't falter. At one point, Wapol cornered Chopper near the edge of the castle wall. The cold wind whipped. At his face and below lay a deadly fall. Wapol's grin widened. You should have stayed in the forest, little monster. Chopper didn't move back. He remembered Hilulok's words, when do you think a man dies? When his heart stops? No, when he's forgotten. The fear that had clung to him all his life fell away like snow from a branch. He met Wapol's eyes, and for the first time he saw not a king, but a coward with a burst of strength. Chopper shifted into heavy point, his body towering over Wapol. His punch landed with a sound like thunder, sending the tyrant sprawling across the stone. Luffy was there in an instant, winding back his arm. Gomu Gomu no, pistol? The final blow sent Wapol crashing through the castle gates, tumbling into the snow below, his crown falling from his head. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of relief, of victory, of the sound of chains breaking in the hearts of Drum Island's people. Later, as the Straw Hats prepared to leave, Chopper stood at the edge of the dock. He hesitated. The ship was ready, the crew was laughing, Luffy was waving him over, but the island was all he had ever known. Then he felt it, a warmth, even in the cold air. Hillalek's flag, still standing atop the castle, flapping in the wind. His mentor's voice seemed to echo in the snow. "Go, Chopper. The world is waiting for a doctor like you." Chopper took a deep breath, adjusted his pink hat, and stepped onto the Going Merry. Luffy grinned. "Welcome to the crew, our doctor." The ship pulled away from the icy shore, leaving Drum Island. Behind, Chopper looked back one last time, his heart heavy but steady. Ahead lay the Grand Line, storms, battles, adventures. And for the first time in his life, he wouldn't face them alone.